Healthy Alternatives Association. I'm also the CEO of MC Nutraceuticals. Josh, want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, I'm Josh.
This is not Theo, by the way. This is Josh.
Yeah, I took Leo's place. We look similar though, right? So I'm the president of the South Carolina Healthy Alternatives Association, CEO of Turk Fusion, which was one of the larger private label contract manufacturing companies in the industry. So glad to be here. This is JD.
Yeah, JD McCormick. For those who don't know me, I'm the chairman of American Healthy Alternatives.
My name is Philip Snow. I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for the American Healthy Alternatives Association. I am also the General Counsel for MC Nutraceuticals.
All right, everyone's here for the Farm Bill. Pressing question is what is Amendment 35? What happened? Why is it there? And what does it mean for the industry? I think, Philip, you could probably kick that off, and then we'll have a brief discussion about it and then go into Q&A.
Sorry, for those who are wondering, I pulled up the actual amendment so we can read it and reference it.
No, it's weird. I just got goosebumps. Anyway, so Amendment 35 was an amendment that was introduced during the Farm Bill markup by Mary Miller, who is a representative from a southern district within the state of Illinois. And her amendment, essentially, if enacted into law, would all but destroy the United States hemp industry. Most importantly, for purposes of this convention, the cannabinoid industry. What that amendment does allow for are solely naturally occurring cannabinoids that are less than 0.3% THC. It does not allow you to take any naturally occurring cannabinoids out of the plant and convert them or manufacture them into anything else. Again, it puts a limit on the actual plant itself being greater than 0.3% THC, and I think for everybody in this room that pays attention to words as much as I do, there's nothing in front of that word THC, or excuse me, that acronym THC. Most of us are very, very comfortable operating within the space of Delta 9 THC. Most people shy away from the idea of total THC, things like that. So, Mary Miller's amendment is kind of a doomsday scenario, right? What happened with it through procedural posturing was the amendment was rolled into a block of other amendments, by and large all of which were Republican, with the exception of one Democratic amendment. All of those amendments were essentially put into a package, and they were voted on by members of the House Ag Committee during the Farm Bill markup on May the 24th. That vote was taken orally. It wasn't something that people really pushed a red or a green button for. And the only Democratic amendment that was included in that was to provide farmers across the country with better access to cell phone communication. So essentially it was I'm going to let all my Republican friends in. We're going to vote on your amendments. We're going to make sure that they all pass. And, farmers and getting cell phones is kind of a no-brainer. So from a posturing perspective, it was a clever tactic at the last minute to ensure an amendment that may or may not have passed a up and down floor vote would have been, it was all but ensured to pass it. So that's where we find ourselves presently. That amendment sits squarely within the context of the House Agricultural Committee's markup to the 2024 Farm Bill. And as I tell people all over the country on a regular basis, or it's certainly become sounding like a broken record over the last few weeks, this is round one of a 15-round knockout fight. There are still many, many more steps and processes that we need to go through in order for this to even become remotely close to being law. But what it does is it sent shockwaves through the industry as of that afternoon, because it would, as I mentioned, destroy everything we've all known to come and love. Now, most people would not necessarily need to put a tinfoil hat on to wonder where that language came from. If you look at a letter that was sent by the United States Cannabis Council to the chair and ranking member of both the House and Senate Ag Committee on April 10th, of this year. That language from the U.S. Cannabis Council, I believe it's on the top of page 2, is virtually the same thing that was introduced in Mary Miller's amendment. U.S. Cannabis Council, for those that are uninitiated to that, is a very large marijuana trade association. They represent large marijuana industry stakeholders across the country. So by virtue of ensuring their market share and kicking us out of their sandbox, so to speak, they got Mary Miller to be their useful idiot in putting this language up and doing what she did to our industry. So I think that hopefully gives you a little bit of context of where we are. And I'm sure that JD, Josh, or Bret can fill in.
I think honestly, does anyone have any, just, the room's smaller now, so we can just have a dialogue. Does anyone have a question behind that?
I think it's maybe something you'll address in the next stage. I'm just curious, like, what the next stage is for this, the timeline we're looking at to ensure that people that are passionate about ensuring the next level gets deterred can mark that on their calendars, be ready to be activated while we're all here and charged up. And if in the next level, if we do our part and it is next by is that it? I think those are two questions that'd be helpful to.
So, yeah, the congressional legislative process is myriad and complex with many small steps along the path.
Similar to that to a state.
Oh, of
I mean,
course,
it's very
yeah.
similar to the state process too.
So there's a lot of little
more
things.
expensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that'll happen over the course of the next 6 months to a year. We also have a gigantic presidential election coming. So in consideration of the presidential election, a potential lame duck session, you know, what is the Senate going to do versus what is the House going to do? What are the next big steps? That's all still kind of up in the air because what we've heard and what could likely happen is the House may attempt to take this to the floor. And that is the House taking its final action on the bill and then kicking it over to the Senate effectively. Now, we've heard rumors that it could be 2025 until we get a farm bill. But I think, you know, stranger things have happened. They could try to fast track it. And so, you know, we're paying very close attention, but I think the next big thing would be the House floor vote, maybe the Rules Committee. So that could be sometime in the next 6 months before the election, but we're not certain.
And the reality is just, you know, because we kind of live, eat, breathe this thing, is the fight's every day. I mean, we
That's
get
right.
updates from the Hill. We have 4 federal lobby teams on the Hill. We get updates every day. Due to the federal government not being completely organized, you know, it's hard to say. All indications, you know, say it'll be 2025 for, you know, a potential negotiation of the farm bill. There's an election in between there, as JD said. But the reality is, you know, we fight every day on the Hill. So, you know, we have 4 lobby firms and then 15 lobbyists up there that are actively, you know, telling our side of the story. Again, you know, as I preached earlier, is you know, our story needs to be told. People need to understand it. We're constantly trying to acquire champions in DC, which we've done semi-effectively. If anyone watched the hearing, you would have seen 3 House members speak up against a Republican en bloc, which was very strange. Republicans typically don't go against their leader, or Democrats for that matter. So, you know, the reality is the en bloc was a way for no one to have a recorded vote, so no one had to, you know, speak out, because this was somehow became the biggest issue in agriculture for the week.
Yep.
Which, given we're about 1% or 0.5% of the actual farm bill, it is, you know, it shows that we are being heard, and there might have been a misstep, if you will. So, you know, what we can say is, although we hear things constantly and it's always evolving, as we, you know, we're surprised by the en bloc that happened during the meeting, is you know, consistently we have to continue to make sure that we, you know, are fundraising for champions at the Hill. We are potentially engaging new lobby firms, and you know, all of that needs to be done with more money, obviously, right? And you know, to be frank, the association only has so much money. So, you know, the next steps for the association specifically is to get champions in DC. Make sure people know what hemp is, what this amendment does, and explain that to them, and make sure that if it does go to the floor, because that could happen, and then we'll have another PR nightmare, because trust me, I did not enjoy 2 Thursdays ago. My phone did not stop ringing. You know, the goal is to make sure that we have the votes to kill it.
Yeah.
So that's the action plan, but that needs to be backed with money.
Yeah, I think just to finish up, what are some next steps that we as an industry can participate in? I think first and foremost, it's being proud of your company.
Yep.
And I know this is crazy, but I've worked out a theory, and I think our industry suffers from collective PTSD, right? What we're doing right now was illegal 10 years ago. I mean, you could have been thrown in prison for doing what we're doing. You know, I know some people who may or may not have driven with some cannabis in their car and maybe got goosebumps if they saw a cop car, right? So collective PTSD is a major problem, and I think one thing that our industry needs to do better is promoting itself. And that can start with your company. That can start with you just going on social media and being proud of your own company, right? Getting your friends and family to participate and share, you know, your posts. I think the next step of that is, you know, getting out in front of big media. You know, the number one form of consumed media in the United States right now is podcasts, right? Joe Rogan has a dedicated base of followers, you know, and I think people, they commute, what's the average commute in the United States? 45 minutes. They're listening to podcasts almost every day. And so getting out in front of media, mainstream media, podcasts, social media, engaging with your friends and family, being proud of yourself and your company, and not hiding. We hear this all the time from whether it's Congress or state reps or state senators, that our industry hides, that we're not participating in government, that we're not actually going and meeting our reps. And thank God for Rep Ford coming today and illustrating how important it is to go meet with your reps. But I think next step is just being proud of your company, promoting your company as much as possible, participating with government officials, and you know, helping us fundraise so we can get more resources.
Yeah, and on the media side, and this is what I've been, you know, we're starting this campaign is you know, the biggest thing that we hear at the Hill, a couple of them are, you know, you're unregulated, which is just a complete farce. And then second, you know, the kids. So one, make sure you're selling to everyone that's 21. That's easy, right? The second thing is we are regulated. You know, there might be some states that haven't fully enacted regulations, but you know, being proud about the fact that you're getting regulated hemp, you know, assuming that you're doing all the things, you know, don't lie, but you know.
Well, like Florida. If you want to sell products in the state of Florida and you're from Tennessee or Kentucky or wherever, you have to meet Florida's regulations.
And that's a good example because we regulated Florida, or JD did specifically, and the team down there, and then they came back and said, you guys aren't regulated. It's like, well, there's statute, right? So how are we not regulated? So these are the things that we have to deal with as an industry is say, you know, my campaign that I've been telling people to do is, you know, at the end of an ad or at the bottom corners, they, you know, get regulated hemp from herb, right? It's those little things that are kind of like psychological warfare that says, you know, maybe a representative will come into your store and they're going to say, oh, this is regulated hemp. Like that's a simple thing that moves the needle, especially for direct to, you know, online e-commerce, you know, having a page about why you're regulated. Like these little things matter because the things that we have to fight up at the Hill are Doritos and things along that line, which we can deal with, but we have to start reprogramming, you know, people because we have such a wide reach on, you know, I know people that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads a month, right? So let's get regulated hemp in the bottom, and that's good for your company too, to be clear. So, you know, assuming that you are buying regulated hemp, of course, you know, I think that's something that's so easy to do that says we are regulated. So being proud of it.
That's right.
You know, be proud that you are a legal operating entity that sells regulated hemp, for example.
That's
Safe,
right.
Regulated, whatever you want to call it. Like all these things matter, and we have to reprogram our industry so that we can reprogram at, you know, at a national level. Like hemp is okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it.
And I think on the heels of that, I would just add, you know, by way of a show of hands, how many of you own a business?
Everyone in the room. Everyone in the room.
How many of you have invited state or local regulators into your business to see how things work? Okay, so
More hands than expected.
arguably,
A fifth.
yeah, a fifth, maybe a quarter. Open the doors, let them in, right?
How?
Engage, call them. You know, whether it's contacting your city councilman, whether it's contacting the police department, the fire department, you know, engaging with.
Ask us. Like if you
Yeah.
if you send us an email, whichever one it is if you are like if you do reach out or you just want to shoot with a sniper rifle, we have no problem finding that person, and we will get them.
And I think
If
that,
we use the association's resources, we can get to anyone in the country besides maybe the president within 48 hours.
and
And
I
there's
think,
no question about that.
you know, it's a very, worthwhile exercise, quite frankly, because if the narrative is you guys aren't regulated, you don't want regulations, you want look-alike products that are marketed to children, open the doors and show them
I love that.
no different than JJ, who said earlier, we have an executive board. We have a compliance officer. We have someone who ensures that all of the certificates of analyses match the barcodes, the QR codes on these products. Invite them in and let them see behind the curtain. Because again, whether it's a function of hearing that our industry likes to hide, our industry isn't regulated, you all as business owners can help change that narrative. And at the end of the day, changing that narrative, A, fosters education, B, it helps get rid of the misinformation that is plaguing this industry, and C, it allows you a better opportunity to engage within your community as responsible stewards of an industry that you're willing to fight so hard for. So to me, one of the best and easiest ways, again, not saying you shouldn't do a compliance check in advance, but invite them in. Let them know you're there. Let them know that, hey, we age-gate. Hey, we make sure that we sell products in child-resistant packaging. Hey, we're not operating within 1,000 feet of a school, regardless of whether or not we can or can't. It's a decision we proactively make as a business. These are the types of things that put a really, really good look on our image, on our industry, and on you as business owners. And it's something that, quite frankly, you don't know what you don't know. And legislators, lawmakers, enforcement agents, they don't know. So consider that as a way of, helping shift that narrative, immediately.
And it's important to know just real quick, these guys are up for election. Crazy enough, senators and House members go door knocking with their staff. This isn't a crazy ask. I just want everyone to kind of to realize that and I realized it recently. I didn't know because I've never been in politics during an election year, but these people literally knock on people's doors in their districts. I mean, it's crazy for me to think about. So if you're in their district and you say, I have a business and I support this many families, this many votes, they will come. I mean, it's not a hard ask at all, especially during elections coming up. This is not crazy to think. And then you foster a relationship with them, God willing, they win. Make sure to pick the winner. But then, keep that relationship going. Get their cell phone, talk to their chief of staff, talk to their legislative director. I mean, all these people, this isn't crazy, and this is as simple as picking up the phone and calling one of us or reaching out directly.
My mom used to tell me, I'm going to quote her here, the best way to ensure you have a clean house is to invite guests. I'm not kidding, right? You want a clean house? Invite some friends over. See what happens. You're going to clean the toilet seat. You're going to rub things down, right? It will make you better to work with regulators, right? I've met with many very powerful regulators, including some of the most powerful drug policy experts in the United States. And I guarantee you, they want to help. Many of these folks, many of the bureaucrats in government, many of them are altruistic. They mean well and they want to help, and they're willing to work with you if you're willing to work with them.
Right.
So if you invite them in, they might say, hey, you understand you don't have GMP, right? But if you did these 2 or 3 things, you'll be almost there, right? You can add gloves or hairnets or whatever these little small things are. The regulators want to help you. I know some
keep
people.
in mind your vote matters. I mean,
That's
again,
right. That's
this is
exactly
like the perfect time to activate everyone you know because votes are everything.
That's right.
And if you want to know who's going to win the election, we can maybe help with that. So
This gentleman over here had
yeah,
a question.
we have two.
So I think in regards to like transparency and unveiling the curtain, I'm a partner in a company, multi-state operator, and I think the biggest thing is when we're dealing with distributors is in regards to THCA flower, which is what we sell, is the testing in different states. I don't think there's a cohesive, with total THCA and all that stuff, so people get scared, being prosecuted, and I think that's one of the biggest issues we see with people coming forward and trying to get local government involved or whatever. They're worried about their livelihoods, their products being taken, going to jail. So that's what I see as the biggest issue.
Just real quick, a quick suggestion is if they're Republican, I would hide anything that looks like weed. So that, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I think you make a very good point.
Yes.
And so, just one last thing, and a lot of people we're dealing with are foreigners and whatnot, maybe not all the way legal, and they're operating these businesses in these states. They're scared. You know, even if I tell them and I try to guide them, which we have, they're not open to it. Frankly.
In that scenario, you know, this strategy might not be the best. I mean, there's a different strategy for everyone. You know, if someone doesn't want to open the bail, my suggestion is please contribute dollars, right? I mean, that's the best answer. But, you know, obviously there's a lot of people that will. If you sell THCA flower, just to be frank from Bret to you, I wouldn't probably invite my representative in. But there's other ways that you can help, whether it's spreading the message or maybe you know someone that has, you know, a GMP facility. Like, there's other things that you can do that don't necessarily mean you need to bring a representative in, especially, you know, if there's marijuana everywhere, right? You know,
Well, no, I agree
air
with you
quotes
that we need to, but the testing and that being worried about being prosecuted, I think that's the biggest thing. So I think you're right. We need to band people together so that they see it's not what they think it is. That we're doing
Well,
something.
that's what lobbyists are for too.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, so I'm based in South Carolina, so there's no medical or recreational, right? So it's the same fear all the time. And guess what we did? We hired lobbyists who spoke our case, and we've got a proactive bill on the way, right? So when you think of it that way, maybe it's not inviting people in, but understanding that if you're not on the bus, you're gonna get run over, right? That, you know, that kind of concept in your state, that's where, I don't even know how to put it, you know, every industry spends money on advocacy, and this industry is no different if it's going to keep existing, right? So South Carolina is the most like anti, you know, when I talk to legislators, which I've talked to just about all of them, they don't even understand what hemp is. They think it's like I don't know, they saw a
textiles probably.
Yeah, textiles, or like one where like I had one legislator I talked to who like went to a convenience store and bought a hemp drink and didn't realize what it was, and then he got high during session. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's terrible. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So like when you're in that sort of situation, it's having lobbyists that then can
Massage the
yeah,
issue.
massage the
Yeah.
issue. Exactly. Right. Versus you doing it, but that's why you hire them. But then they can bring you in like a better light, which is where it is for me versus like, because I'm in the same page where like if I bring regulators in, I'm nervous that they're gonna arrest me or something like that if I've got, I mean, I don't do flour because South Carolina, you can't have flour. But I guess point being, that's why you give money to an association, and you have an association in your state, and you hire lobbyists to make this happen.
So I mean, I don't think just what we're looking for. I'm sorry. Just maybe some guidance on how to.
Where are you located? Give me some context.
North Carolina, Greensboro. So
This is an easy one.
So when we receive testing COAs from farms, so basically work with a bunch of farms around the country who give us our product. We are buying legal product, what we know. So if we regulators were to come in, or let's say one of our stores or distros were to get in trouble, they have the testing. They go and test it, it tests hot. So we're partially responsible for that. I don't know how to do an efficient thing where like I heard in the beginning you said you should do testing of your product. Problem is we buy the product, we're locked into it. If it tests hot, oxidation, whatever the scientific term is, I don't know. We're stuck with the product. There's nothing we can really do at that point. So
What's
there's
your
dollars.
purchase agreement say?
I'm sorry?
What's your purchase agreement say?
I don't have the answer for that. But
I mean, I would just default to what the contract says, right? I mean, if you're being sold a bill of goods that ends up not being what you paid for, then maybe you could look at that as a way of getting back or getting compensated. But I think most importantly is, let's just say you're operating north of Wilmington. I understand things have been a little bit difficult over there recently. If you're buying something from across the country with a certificate of analysis that demonstrates something is less than 0.3% delta 9 THC by dry weight, and then it's being shipped via common carrier, USPS, one of your friends who likes to drive with THCA flower in their car, you know, I would make sure that if you are getting a certificate of analysis from someone on the other side of the country or someone halfway across the country or wherever it may be, they're not pushing that Delta 9 limit as close to 0.3% as possible. Because the founder of the best cannabis testing lab in the world told me that you should be testing that every 30 days. And it can change that quickly. This is a very unique commodity in that, you know, if you put baking soda on a table, it's not gonna just turn into crack with a little bit of sunlight. But, you know, operating within a legal gray area comes with its own attendant risks. And so I think if you know, we're asking one of us to give you guidance or, you know, some sort of blessing on, you know, how to do that, I think the best way that you can ensure that you're doing everything above board is either A, have a purchase agreement that gives you some sort of recourse if it's not as advertised, but B, more importantly, make sure that your chain of custody is entirely locked up from top to bottom, one end to the other, and that, heaven forbid, you know, you don't just take the farmer, what they provide you for a COA, you actually retest it yourself. Because at the end of the day, yes, you can make an argument that you lack the requisite criminal intent to be distributing a controlled substance, but any prosecutor worth their salt might do a little bit of homework on your website and see that what you're selling may be advertised as weed, may be advertised as the real thing, and therefore it would be really hard to hide behind the, I didn't have the criminal intent to be distributing a controlled substance. So unfortunately, that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but it's the real answer. So I would just make sure that you have everything documented from the beginning to the end, because that's, you know, a gray area that, yes, there's a significant opportunity in the space right now, but, you know, no things for certain. You know, in North Carolina, until legislation gets passed, I mean, you're dealing with a variety of law enforcement priorities across the entire state. You're dealing with people that might be having a bad day. They might be fighting with their wife. They might be upset with the fact that someone might, you know, be of a different skin color than they are. They might be just really sick and tired of the fact that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck, yet I keep getting proved wrong. They're going to find a way to make an example. So ultimately, I think the best thing that you can do, like I said, have an airtight purchase agreement. More importantly, know what you're getting and know what you really have.
And I'd get introduced to Leo Vantine, who was supposed to be up here because he's the president of the North Carolina chapter.
I mean, that was very helpful. It was. We are located in Jamestown, so right next to Greensboro, across the street from a sheriff's office. So they actually, we were operating for 2 years. They showed up one day, like, asking us, hey, we're getting this complaint that there's a smell here. Can we walk in and check out what you have? They did. Nothing ended up coming from it, but we went and tested our stuff, and in our purchase agreement, it did state, now that I'm thinking about it, that in transit, the levels of Delta 9 can change, and that they're not liable. So
I would also make sure that
Get a better lawyer.
Yeah,
we work with Rockite.
I used to work for him.
Okay.
We got a question right here.
Hi everyone, thanks. My name's John, and just wanted to start out by thanking you guys for taking your time for the whole series of presentations. It's been really informative and helpful, and much appreciated, and great content. Just wanted to add to the comments about letting a regulatory agent in your facility or a state rep. I've been involved in the space for 10, 12 years. A model that for most of the small businesses here we found that really works, whether it's your home or the location of your business, especially between now and election season. You could set up a small fundraiser at your facility, invite them in, 20, 25 people, wine and cheese reception. That many small donor checks still adds up to a significant amount for a state rep. It matters. You'll get one-on-one time to talk to them about your issues, show them your employees, show them your product lineup, everything that the panel has mentioned here today. And plus there's dollars attached to it. It's really, really outcome determinative. And I don't know how many people wait there, 50 of them in various jurisdictions. Everyone went home and did that sort of reception between now and October. I think you'd see a real impact, a real educational component that we've heard from the state representative earlier that's really necessary, telling why we're not the boogeyman. There's no reason for us to hide in the shadows. This is a great product, whether it's medical or it's just also recreational. There's nothing wrong with that. And spreading that message, proselytizing it, the dollars that go with it, showing them that we're upstanding citizens is really helpful. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to reemphasize, I mean, that's the biggest thing. You know, unfortunately, we can't be everywhere at all times in all places in all states. There's 50 of them. And at the end of the day, these, you know, the DC people specifically go home eventually. So, you know, wherever you are, I mean, that's a dream scenario. If we had fundraisers, you know, once a month for all the reps, and I mean, we'd be done. I wouldn't have to sit up here. I could go back home and run my business and, you know, laugh and have fun again. So, you know, the little, everything counts. And again, if you don't want them in your business, rent out a pub, do whatever. If they see vote, we have a joke, cash and votes. If there's cash and votes involved, it doesn't matter where it is at the end of the day. So
do it at your house. They love to. They love to meet 10, 15 constituents. It all adds up for them, and they love it.
yep.
At the end of the day, that leaves an indelible impact, right? Because they'll remember that event. They'll remember the 10, 25, 50 faces that they looked out into the audience, because you're giving them a platform for them to sell themselves to you in the form of, you know, members of their constituency. And at the end of the day, you know, by giving them that platform, you're inviting them in, and that, you know, 50 faces, they're going to remember that. You know, whether that's just $100 checks from every person that attends, you know, that, you know, again, adds up. And, you know, it's hard to ignore those faces when a piece of legislation is in front of you that says, hey, we're going to put all those faces out of business. We're going to make sure that we get rid of their health insurance.
I once heard a statistic that the average legislator in the United States sees 3,000 issues a year. I promise you, they don't have 3,000 fundraisers a year. They might only have a couple dozen, and they're memorable, right? So we have to stand out, we have to participate, and as contentious as this issue has been, the more engaging we are, the better off we'll be.
Absolutely.
Sir?
I'm from Iowa, so the farm bill for us was kind of old news when it came down, just because we were already facing legislation that really echoed it. So starting in July, we're not going to be able to sell any Delta products that don't have more than 4 milligrams per serving and less than 10 milligrams per package. And the language surrounding that was very specific about the packaging content, so that it outlawed a lot of products that consumers and retailers, plus I'm guessing, that they thought were safe. But like you have mentioned several times about the bad actors in our industry, the people who are selling products that are either presented as alternatives for children or you know, popular products. But like I see things that don't even have milligram counts on them that are completely synthetic. And like at that point, do you really trust the manufacturers? Like it's, you know, you've talked about big cannabis, but what about like the big hemp actors who don't care about what the things that you care about?
So, yes, if I can take that. This has to become a collective voice. The only way our voice, the panelists up here, matter is if we build a strong enough coalition in the industry that we can push back internally. You know, we talked about trademark infringement earlier today, and traditionally trademark infringement is done by the private company, right? But even Mars Candy Co. is going to the government and saying, hey, there's all these small businesses selling hemp products, and some of them infringe on our trademarks, but we don't have the resources to go after 500 retailers spread all over the United States, right? So a lot of this has to be self-regulation. It has to be internal to the industry. But the only reason we're even up here in the first place is that several people at this trade show, you know, believe in us and believe that we have the right remedy for our problems, but we need more of us. More people speaking up, more people pointing the finger, more people engaging with some of those bad actors and saying, hey, you know, excuse my French, get your shit together, right? I mean, we're coming out of a 100-year prohibition here, guys, and it cannot be lost on us that we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save this for the small businesses. Yep. And if we allow that 0.5%, that 1% of bad actors to be the company that's highlighted and becomes, you know, the poster child for hemp, we're going to lose. I mean, look at what happened in e-cigarettes, right? 2019, the Avali lung injury scandal that was on every news station in the United States was all blamed on Juul. One company who decided to use Instagram to you know, advertise their products, add towards children, right? Somebody's added that.
And it's just that simple. Like
Yep.
Juul, I mean, I say this, is like, I don't want to get Juuled, right? Because Juul got screwed. I mean, like just be clear, Juul got screwed, and I do want to touch on this. You know, I'll speak from the business. My company's a raw material company. We have 800, 900 clients. We supply a lot of the industry, and although I can't speak for all my clients, but 99% of them, I would say have legitimate products. What I tell legislators on the trademark infringement products, and this is 99% true in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but those are black market products. So I don't, whether they're coming out of California by black market legacy operators, whether they're trademark infringement, like all these things are illegal. So they're black market. So I don't like to think that that's although the messaging has to be done on the state, when we deal with this everywhere, to be clear, but again, going back to that, we need to communicate. I mean, Iowa, just to be frank, and I'm really sorry that you're going through this, trust me. But because no one spoke up in Iowa, and we didn't have money, we can't help, right? So, it is our mission, and all the people that spoke today, to help out everywhere we can, but without state support, we just can't fund it. I mean, I won't say how much money I spend out of my own pocket, but let me tell you, it's a shitload. At some level, you just can't be everywhere, right? So, part of the reason why Champs has allowed us to have this platform, which thank God for Champs, is to have these discussions, again, proactively, so we don't get screwed in South Dakota or Iowa or Wyoming, or wherever it is, because every state does matter, because guess what? You got 3 representatives, or you got a representative from Iowa and 2 senators from Iowa on the Ag Committee. Kind of problem. Same with South Dakota and Wyoming and all these other states. If the Senate does flip, like everything matters. So it's, the association's position is to protect everything we can, given the infrastructure we have. And right now we're in scale-up mode. Trying to just continue to teach people what they can do on their own, how they can give money, how they can speak their message, talk to their reps. Like, there's plenty of options for everyone, but again, we need to get this message out, right? Because a lot of people don't know what 3 years ago, if you would have told me I would be in politics and writing laws and all this stuff, I would have laughed at you, but here we are, 3 years later. As these people have known me before, well, JD knew me, I don't know if Phil knew me before, but before the age of 27, I passed 4 state laws. I mean, that's pretty fucking wild, let's be clear. So, you can make a difference with your speech, with your money, whatever it is. I'm blessed to have a couple of those things, right? So I'm investing everything I can back in this industry to see it flourish. We need to make sure the Farm Bill gets passed with the definition as is, and we need to put state regulations in place, and we need to reverse bad ones.
Yep.
Those are the 3 things.
Yeah.
And we need all the fucking help we can get.
Session exists to make changes, right? So if you're in a state that has a bad law, look at that as like firing you up to get people together to get a better one next session, right? It sucks, but it's, yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm one of the minority in our state that wants that, and I think that's why we didn't get a lot of pushback. I mean, I live in a town of 60,000 people, and there are 8 other smoke shops that all sell the products that I'm talking about that they're trying to ban, and that's where they get the examples for them. Well, how do we impose regulation on one set of products while also saying that these ones aren't okay, but the people who are selling those products don't care either way?
So it's excuse me. I don't want to kind of laser focus on you too much as an individual, but how many times did you go to the legislature?
I didn't go. I did not make it to the Capitol myself. I'm a single business owner. I pretty much work 7 days a week, but I did email, I did call, I did the things that I could do in my power. And to hear at the end of the day that we didn't try hard enough or that we didn't have enough money, it sucks. Especially when there are people who are trying. But you're absolutely right about the people who don't, and they have their heads in the sand, and it's going to get caught up. I'm all for regulation. That's what I'm doing in this room, and I want it to be as broad and as clear so that we are all selling safe products.
I can't. So go ahead.
So you guys had the deck stacked against you to begin with in Iowa this year. Last year's law wasn't that great either. But I have a really close personal friend that owns a handful of stores in that sell, hemp-derived products. And, much like yourself, he is operating in a place where there are people that are selling products that are, completely out of bounds, not, in compliance with any of the applicable laws, and, they're making money hand over fist, right? And my friend, at a very deep financial sacrifice and a personal sacrifice, is playing by the rules. And I know from my experience with him that, that hurts. And my heart breaks for him every single day because I know the money that he's losing, I know the brain damage that he's going through, I know the heartache that he's going through, and I know how hard he has fought to change those laws, to make sure that the bad actors certainly don't have a place at the table anymore, but also to make sure that he can ensure the longevity and stability of his business. And it's something that he pours blood, sweat, and tears into every single day. But he still plays by the rules. So, first and foremost, my hat is off to you. But having a close personal friend, that I happen to be sitting next to, that is playing by the rules in a state that, is all but trying to get rid of hemp-derived products, it comes at no small cost. And so I don't want to sit up here, on a stage and tell you, hey, you should have fought harder, or you should have raised more money, because that's really a non-answer to me. That's kind of a cop-out. But I think it's certainly something that we can, engage with you on. There have to be other people,
Distros, for example, I mean, it's something
People-
that we can help with, is connecting to distros is the first thing I
people
thought.
people that are, in your Dubukes, your Davenports, your Des Moines, Moline, all over the place in Iowa, that maybe haven't banded together yet, that might be able to, rub some pennies together and fund a lawsuit. Maybe something where we can challenge that law, and get an injunction against the enforcement of that law. I was on a phone call earlier today with people in the state of Wyoming about the lawsuit that we're getting ready to file there for bad legislation that got passed this year that, has a very, very terrible consequence for that entire state's hemp industry. So while I will tell you that, it's awful, it's very unfortunate that you're dealing with that, that doesn't mean that you need to give up. And it doesn't mean that you should immediately just run toward the direction of non-compliance just for the sake of that quick dollar. There are ways that we can still help. There are ways that we can still, let your voice be heard. And if it's, vis-a-vis a lawsuit this year that then takes you to the regulatory table next year when the legislative session kicks off again, maybe that's the way we go. So I would just want to tell you that, certainly it's frustrating, and, it's probably going to come at a great personal cost to you and potentially some of your employees, and my heart goes out to you on that. But I've seen it happen. I know someone who's going through it, and I hate that you're going through it, but there are still ways that we can help, and there are still ways that we can help you make a difference within your own backyard as well.
Appreciate the time and effort you all are putting in for this, so thank you.
One of the things, just to wrap that up, one of the things you can do is just like these politicians go door to door. Maybe you go door to door and round up, I guarantee you between 25 and 50 stores can fund a lawsuit. No question.
Easy.
So easily. So you go hit up 150 stores, you might get 25. You might just make 24 best friends that you've ever met. I mean, we have become very close over this war that we're in, right? So we are very good friends up here, and it might take that. It might be a couple of weekends of just going store by store by store by store by store and saying, hey guys, we got to put up 75 grand to put a lawsuit together because that's not what it's going to cost.
Ping your customer list. Maybe their friends don't shop at your store. Maybe they still use the same products. Anecdotally, again, 6 degrees of separation, outreach helps.
Yep.
And don't give up, ever.
Don't give up. That's right. Anybody else with a question?
I saw her hand first.
Mine's really quick. I'm newer to the industry. Where would you say is the best place to stay up to date on? It seems like a lot of the regulation and everything changes very rapidly. Where's the best place to stay up to date on those changes, really across the nation? Or does your company do that?
He just whispered to himself inside of his brain. No, because it is so dynamic, it's very difficult because if a piece of legislation passes, you have to understand there's an entire process behind the passage of that legislation called rulemaking. The agency then has to go create the rules that dictate what that law is actually going to do and how it's going to be implemented. And because it's all very modern, it's all happening within the last 2 years, some of these states passed a law last year and they haven't even gotten through rulemaking yet. It is very complex. There is no one resource. I think us collectively, often we sit on our GovOps calls and we put our heads together and we all look through several resources to combine and put together a site picture of what it actually looks like in a certain state. It's very easy to, and we see this a lot as well, it's very easy to interpret a law, and then the reality on the ground is actually much different than what's on paper, right? And so some of it is actually calling some of the local businesses and saying, what's the implementation been like? How many times have you been visited by a regulator? Are sheriffs stopping by? Are there raids in your state? So collectively, I think on this stage and through many of our other advocates, we can give you a site picture on just about any state. But that's the benefit of membership. And to your point, should you join our association, you have free access to any one of us. You can call us, email us. We've got again, a long list of resources that we can use, whether it's a lobbyist, an attorney, whoever it is, and get you the answers you need. So thank you for that good question.
Excuse me, saying way too much karaoke last night, so forgive me.
What song?
Creedence Clearwater Revival was very sea-list-minded last night.
Hitting the Seas, I like it.
I guess mine's more of a question and a statement, seeing as that, it keeps coming up again about these bad actors that we have inside of our industry that don't follow any rules, that put products out there that jeopardize all our well-being and our livelihoods. As the association grows, have you guys thought about putting out a code of conduct or SOPs that companies that you recommend should follow, things that people should look for on labels? I think it's time to start pivoting, and we need to educate the business owners more too.
So,
and I think something like a list or a resource where a store owner or manufacturer can go, hey, these are trusted, reputable brands, stores, retail, whatever it may be. That would be a handy resource.
So a good friend of mine, Chris Fontes, is now the chairperson of a group called the U.S. Hemp Authority. He's trying to do this very same thing. The difficult part is hitting critical mass in internal regulation. How do you actually get 90% of any industry to adopt internal regulations? That's very difficult to do at scale, especially when you've got 50,000 small businesses, and any one of those could be a manufacturer, could be a distributor, a retailer. Getting that message out for internal regulation is very difficult, and it's going to be a big marketing problem. The best way to do this, and I mean this honestly, is if every company that came to us and was members of ours started pushing that narrative outward, you get to the second ring on that 6 degrees of separation. Then those companies do the same thing, third ring, fourth ring, fifth ring. Eventually you'll cover everyone. But that is going to be a long, arduous process. Now, I make this argument with legislators all the time. Legislation takes a sledgehammer to our industry, right? When we need a scalpel. That's the most common thing I see, is that because of lack of information, lack of engagement from industry representatives, the legislation just takes a blunt force object and beats the industry over the head. We need a scalpel, and one of those tools, one of the scalpels we could use is internal regulation. But the only way that happens is industry participation, is getting more and more people to do it. Because I could start right now and I could say every company needs GMP, every company, you can't have cartoons, every company, and I'm just standing on stage shouting across a room. It doesn't do anything. How do we get more and more people to adopt that frame of mind? And that's actually what we're doing up here right now, is trying to educate people to bring them into this.
It's happening. I mean, in the big distributors in each state are critical to this. So, for the bigger brands that maybe have a better relationship with some of these big distributors, they have stepped up. Like we saw them step up in Georgia, we saw them step up in Illinois. Even Champs, has brought us in and allowed us to platform us, which I know we're over time, so I apologize. But the reality is it is getting better. And politicians, again, they do get that there's going to be bad actors, and my new script, which evolves over time, is listen, this isn't hemp. This isn't regulated hemp. It's illegal black market marijuana products, and that resonates pretty well. And as I say that message, I have to call my friends at big brands and say, hey, tell your distros to cut the shit, because that's at the end of the day, platforming Doritos or Doritos or whatever people call it. I personally, again, I supply 800, 900 companies. I've never seen this stuff before.
Yeah.
And I know that it exists, obviously, because I have to deal with it. But 90%, like, this stuff is coming out of California. It is black market stuff. This stuff was around 10 years ago when I was younger, when I was a kid. So they've just scaled up because they found a distribution outlet through these retailers. So, for now, again, if you run a legitimate operation, circling back is bring them in, show them the legitimate operation. We will continue to self-regulate as much as we can. It's getting better every day, and we will remove these products. But even when they are removed, just to be clear, I mean, if you don't have those conversations with your state legislators, they're still going to think that. I reverse image searched the Mary Miller photo, and it was used 72 different times. So they recirculated a trademark infringement wall of Delta 8, Delta 9 products, and it was reused 72 times. Like, they're going to reuse it. But it is, things are getting better. The industry is coming together, and people are listening, including the distributors, which I think is a huge step forward for the industry, is we need help from the distributors. And them to say, hey, we're not going to carry this product anymore. If we don't carry it, then they'll buy a legitimate product. Like, it's not like people are going to stop buying it because they're not Doritos. Probably gross anyway. Sorry.
All right, guys, speaking of which, we're over time. Thank you very, very much. Come see us after.